So Bella, I'm gonna ask you to summarize how the film opens up, and tell us why you were in that space. Why did you show up?
Yeah, the film opens up with a black brunch demonstration. So it was New Year's Day. Um, White people were having brunch. Well, I think this was what 2016. 2016. White people were having brunch and just completely unconcerned with the fact that we had just lost uh, two community members to police violence on the west side of Chicago. Um, so we disrupted the brunch with saying the names of all these people who have been killed by police in Chicago, police across the nation. Um, it was white people who were like, well, we watched the news. Y'all gotta see it though. Come back, see the whole thing because I can't even do it justice. This man literally had on like a elf pajama outfit. It was ridiculous. It's the most clowned out thing you ever see. Um, and he was dead serious. Like we all watched the news and they came and disrupted my brunch. And it's like, sir, what? Come back and see it if you didn't see that part. But yeah, we were doing that because this is not a matter of watching the news for us. These are our lives. These are our hearts. This is our spirit. This is our energy. This is our life source. This is draining. We cannot turn the channel. This is what we go through on a day to day basis. Um, and yeah, that's one of the only scenes that me and Janae are in the same scene together, I think. Um, our comrade, who we are talking about, who we lost, whose partner and mother of his child was scheduled to moderate this panel, um, was in that scene. Um, yeah, yeah. What was I don't even know if I
Yeah, I was asking you why did you show up in that space? What did it mean to you
why did
to
I
be
show
there?
up? Um, Lots of reasons. Anger, mostly hurt, depression, sadness, um, and it's something to do with that, like protesting, organizing, community. It was something to do with all of that hurt, and I probably will never turn down a chance to make white people uncomfortable. Um, Yelling in their face while they eating brunch. Like I had never heard nobody say like, let's go disrupt white people brunch on the north side of Chicago. And I was like, dang, that's something we could have been doing after school every day. So I was down.
Bianca Jones, thank you so much for being here. You're not a main character in the film, but you contributed so much to this community. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you fit into the activism community of Chicago?
All right, hi everyone. My name is Bianca Jones. I'm an educator and an organizer. A lot of my work has been focused on the west side of Chicago.
Gang,
I
gang.
work with, right, I'm originally from West Baltimore, Maryland. So when I kind of started making the connection to the west side of Chicago, just kind of realizing that there was much more, there was a significant lack of infrastructure and resources that were invested into the west side, and that really reminded me of my hometown. So that's where I started to gravitate. I work with an organization called 360 Nation, where we use gifts, talents, and relationship building to promote self determination in the black community. I've worked at Village Leadership Academy, which is a social justice school where students are engaged in a grassroots curriculum from kindergarten through the eighth grade. So I would say during this time, this is kind of like my introduction to Chicago in some ways. So I had been here for a while, but around the time that this is filming, when you all are having that brunch, which also one of the early scenes is when VLA students did that march to the JCDC where Bella was there, and those were my students, and I actually ended up getting hired like midway through the school year, so right after that. So I kept hearing about Caleb and all of them would talk about where our big march to the JCDC. I just kept hearing about how exciting it was, but I had just missed it. So in terms of this community, I was kind of finding my way at that point. But I ended up kind of going in a different direction. I didn't really do a lot of those like direct action type protests in terms of answering your question, Morgan.
And the JCDC, she's talking about the juvenile, system where Bella did her speech. You think you have won, but we are here to remind you that you haven't. Um, Thank you so much, Bianca. And another part that some people may have missed, Ashley, is the explanation where we break down how the movement for Black Lives really spread through this country. Can you give us an overview? Like, what is the difference between like that Black Lives Matter organization versus the movement for Black Lives that we covered here in Chicago? Like these organizers that you see in front of you.
Yeah, I think the difference. Black Lives Matter started initially as a saying. It was popularized by three black queer women, and following, I believe, the killing of Trayvon Martin, and that's really when it started to circulate more publicly. And not long after that, those same three women founded Black Lives Matter as this broader, like 501c3 organization. But people continue to organize under this umbrella of Black Lives Matter, and I think that's why we've recently also kind of seen it transform to the movement for Black Lives, so that people don't like associate it with the organization. But that scene was really important in showing not only the birth of the Black Lives Matter movement and how nationwide it was, but to also show that like these organizations and these organizers don't exist in a silo, that almost all the actions and the campaigns that you see in the film were done in partnership with other organizations, and that oftentimes people are they're adopting strategies that they've seen in other cities, in other states. Let Us Breathe, for example, which Bella organized with throughout the film, was birthed out of the after the Mike Brown killing in St. Louis, and the strategies they saw of organizers down there. So it was really important to show how interconnected all of these organizations are, because I think oftentimes the criticism of the BLM movement is that there's no direction or purpose or strategy or like ultimate thing that people are fighting towards, but that people have been strategizing across the nation for years and years, very intentionally, and seeing what works in one city, bring it to another, to really elevate this platform.
And one thing that the movement for Black Lives was very intentional about was organizing through a Black queer feminist lens. There were Black queer women at the helm of these organizations, and that's definitely true for Chicago. And this film, as a form of activism, I believe, also told this story through the lens of Black queer women. And we've gotten some, mixed reviews, and we didn't think that everybody or like the mainstream would understand this film is here to challenge, how we even watch and view documentaries, and definitely challenge progressive ideals. So for the organizers, why is it important to make a film that's beyond showing the beginning, middle, and end of a particular case like Rokia Boy? Why is it important that we focused on the lives of organizers and who they are in their fullness?
Is that an Ashley question or?
No,
She said
I'm
the
asking you
organizers.
like what it means. I'm asking you what it means
Answers.
to you, because you could turn on the news and people will say like, "Oh, these Black Lives Matter organizers, they probably ain't got jobs. They just out here in the street." There's so many preconceptions, misconceptions about what an organizer looks like. So, what does a film like this do to that narrative?
The nuance is important. The nuance is important to see us as human, to see that we are fighting for so much. It's so much more than whatever action we are at the time. Like we are bringing our full selves to this. And it's why we're here. It's because we exist at the margins. It's because we are Black and woman and queer and live on the west side and in poverty. Like it's because of all of these things that we show up. Um, it's because we are not seen. It's because our lives are not a part of the mainstream story. It's because of that we are here in the first place. And then it's also the importance of it being through a black queer feminist lens is that it's really not about our sexuality at all, but it's so much about who who we uplift, and the fact that the people at the margins have to get free for any of us to get free. Like we miss so much. We miss so much when we just focus on men. We miss y'all know we miss a lot when we focus on white people, okay? Um, but if we just focus on black men, we miss a whole lot if we just focus on um, the black middle class or upper class, the Jay Z, Beyonce. We miss we miss so much, you know. So it's about like zooming in to zoom out, kind of, to see more of the full picture, more of our humanity, more of what this country, this city means for the people who live within it.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah. So when I think about your question, it to me almost feels as if it's framed as if like, well, do we want white people or people who don't agree with our politics to understand our humanity? And I would hope, I don't really think that's the point of this, right? Because I don't care what they think. Um, However, when I watch this film and when I reflect on it now, I think it's just the importance of us seeing us. Black women seeing each other, young black girls seeing this. Because I think there's a few things for people to note. It's like, one, the idea that this is a snap in time. Like, Bella is young. Looking at you, like, one, you don't age, so you look the same. But the haircut, your fashions, like, you're different then, right? You're younger. So I'm like, Bella is young, and that nothing that we witnessed was like the biggest thing that you're ever going to do. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much more purpose that lies ahead of you. Same with Janae. We're watching Janae as she's like finishing up a doctoral program. Like, that's obviously just the beginning for her, because that's the step stool that she's taking to further her career. So there's like the idea of just watching young black women who have their thing that is going on, but we also know what lies ahead of them, right? Realizing that they're young, and this is only a moment in some ways, right? So I've said that too many times. Now, also, there's like the idea, I always pull away from Bella's story of her relationship with her mother. To me, that's the most powerful part of the film. And for me, it's like I have a mother who like has been incarcerated and struggles with addiction, and it's like really cool to see the love that exists between you all, despite. You know what I mean? Through it, right? So it's like, I think that's the cool part, that people like me can see, like, dang, it really is possible for a mother-daughter relationship to have different struggles and for them to still like have like so much love there. So I think about things like that, like how we're supposed to see each other, as the inspiration for this film, not anybody else recognizing our humanity or our queerness. Like, even that is just kind of like, okay. These are just, I don't know, these are like young sisters who are doing it, and that's important to me.
Yes, say that.
Bella, I want to go deeper into your relationship with your mother, your family in general. You had a line in the poem that you read for your proposal for the Soros Fellowship, where you said the last line that we put in the film: "My shame kept me pacified and silent long enough." Can you talk about the shame that society places on those of us who have experienced incarceration or family members have experienced incarceration, and how have you overcame that, or have you overcome it?
Yeah, I got a funny story actually. So, all right. No, cause I was in college, right? And dang, my whole college career was before this. Dang, okay. um, so I was in college, and it was this black girl from somewhere, I don't know, like Omaha or something weird. But she she was she was talking to me about like being a legacy daughter, right? And she's like, well, my mama was an AKA. What was yours? And I'm like, a 4CH.
That's so hood.
but, but it took a lot to get to that point where, like, I was not ashamed in that moment to say, girl, I don't know nothing about none of that you talking about, okay? Like, all I know is what I know, and this is what I know. But yeah, for a long time, it was like something we did not talk about. Even just me growing up, this is in a film. I thought my mother was away at college, and that really messed me up as a little kid. Like, college day, I'm not going to college. What's wrong with you? I'm not going there. Why they gotta stay there all the time? Why they can't come visit? Why I can't? I go there, they want to pat me down and stuff. I don't like that. I'm not going there. you know. Um, and just what we try to do to alleviate that shame. And what's the line? What was the question?
Your line was, "My shame kept me pacified and silent long enough. How did you overcome that shame?"
Um, you like a lot of this film too was more work in overcoming that. The Sister Survivor Network, me starting that, me having these conversations, me bringing people together, um, in a place where my mother could feel comfortable sharing her story, um, and feel empowered sharing her story. Was really important to me because we didn't have those spaces, right? It was like always this thing over her. Like, even my mom has never been shy to come out to protest with me. She loves that. That's what I do, how I engage in my community. Um, but she was still very much so like, that was heavy on her. Like, I don't want to speak. Even if I want to say something, I want to make it known that I'm proud of you. Like, I don't want to take up too much space because I don't feel like I talk right. Like, you went to school, you could say this stuff this way. I'm going to say it this way. Like, it was always this um, holding herself back. So a lot of my organizing, a lot of me bringing community together to talk about these issues, because a lot of our work for a long time was centered on death, and police just killing people. And I wanted to do more to talk about, well, they not doing a good job when they don't kill them either. Like, when you do your job successfully and you arrest someone and you incarcerate them, you prosecute them, like, that's police brutality as well, right? Like, that's family separation. That's a death of its own. So I wanted to talk more about that. Um, and that was really because of my relationship with my mother, an intentional effort to try to heal my relationship with my mother.
Can I add that I think that that's an important point, which is part of the reason that I was never always totally down with that scene at first, because it's like I think that people who come from a certain level of privilege, who have never experienced all the intersections of these systems, like, they were equally being jarred, like, kind of like in some ways for the first time, like, Black Death, like, what do we do? But I'm like, I seen people locked up. You know what I mean? I feel like I had experienced so much already. I was kind of like, what do we do to build, to, prevent this as much as possible, create alternatives for people? Like, that just always felt like my call.
So I work also at the intersection of activism and media. And actually, I want to talk about our decision to not show Black Death and re traumatize the audience with this film, because I know, this was a film 4 years in the making, and many people watched the film. She's gone to many fellowships, and some people asked for that footage. Like, there's this big buildup to Laquan McDonald, but we didn't put that in the film. What went into that decision, and how does that help to reshape narratives?
I actually don't think it took. I don't think, like, I know for us as a film team, it wasn't much of a decision making process at all, because all of us being emerging Black creatives that are impacted by these constant images of Black death, of Black trauma. Um, we didn't want to perpetuate that, and we understood the impact that the images that we have seen, the images that, or the impact that has had on our psyches. And so for me, I feel like it was actually a more creatively complicated thing to do to make that decision. I think a lot of protest films or films that focus on police violence include footage like that as a way to get the audience to sympathize with the person that was killed. But I felt like my purpose was to say, like, you shouldn't have to see that to feel impacted by the death of a black person that's been killed by the police. I think people are equally as impacted that in the film. In our explanation, we see, or Janae says he was shot. He was 17 years old, shot 16 times, and we literally see the dots on that image that came out in the news media. Like, if that number doesn't stick to you enough or impact you enough as an audience member, I just feel like I can't force that sympathy or empathy onto somebody. But also, like, again, like us as a majority black team, I think we didn't want to recreate that news cycle that already exposes us to those images, especially in Chicago. If you were here, I had to actively try to avoid seeing that tape, and when I did see it, it was like maybe 2 years after. Like, I couldn't watch it when it first happened. And so I felt like it's already present in the media. If you want to go see it, go Google it. Like, it's not a hard thing to find. I just don't feel like it's our responsibility to create that sympathy for people that don't have it, because this film is really meant to hold back black people and provide them a reflection space. And by pulling in that trauma, I just think it would have perpetuated that cycle further.
I completely agree. And one thing that I've been trying to do with my work with the tribe is to expand the narrative of violence, or how we think of like what violence is. It's not necessarily just somebody being shot or hit or punched or whatever. It can be having violent images. It bleeds, it leads. I feel like the news is violent by leading all news segments with images of black and brown death. I feel like closing schools is violent, especially in black communities where that is a stronghold of community and maybe like the only resource for black youth in that whole area. Or building a railroad. We just had another activist here at a previous screening talking about how she fought to try to get a railroad from coming through her community in Inglewood and lost that fight. So since Bianca, you and Bella, you all work and do a lot of your activism organizing on the West Side, what is some violence, some systematic violence that you are working against, and how would you like to see the West Side be nourished? You can go ahead and you can talk about the work that you've done. Bianca is also in a documentary short film herself, so tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm like, dang, I don't have a grand plan for the West Side. That's like,
But yeah, just a
But-
example. Yeah.
yes, ma'am. Well, one thing that my students and I led a charge to rename Douglas Park. So we learned that Douglas Park was named after Stephen Douglas, who owned slaves, and we started a movement to have it renamed for abolitionist Anna and Frederick Douglass. And I feel like that's one of, yeah, it was cool. Thank you. Snaps. It was one of the, but it's one of those things, right, where it's just like there's an implicit psychological impact there that it seems small, but I think that it's larger than we even imagine, right? It's like when we look at a community, right, but honestly, a whole side of the city to a large extent that is largely neglected and has really been the victim of structural violence by the state. In terms of taking out all those resources, when we then have a park where our children play, where we gather, that's named after someone who was also responsible for our brutality, like, what message does that send? It's so easy to rename something or to name spaces and claim spaces that are named after the people who've done great things in our community, in our lineage, because that tells students, that tells young people when they walk into the space subconsciously, I can do great things too. So that's one area where we've kind of focused some energy out west. There's a lot of mutual aid initiatives that are happening right now, getting a lot of toiletries and baby supplies, which are huge for families, to folks out west. And another area that really always speaks to me kind of is anti-blackness in schools. I honestly think that, I don't know, schools aren't always safe havens for our youth. I think that in some ways we create a narrative because we never want to like vilify, right, our students or our teachers. We never wanted to come off that way, and I have no intention of doing that either. But it's like sometimes students and teachers don't have all the resources that they need to make these really safe spaces where students can thrive. Sometimes like teachers are overworked, or they haven't like learned enough themselves to really give our students a rich cultural history or historical knowledge that like really makes them love themselves and understand the greatness that they come from, and like also get practical and creative skills to know that they can like go out and do some cool shit. You know what I mean? Like, we're not necessarily infusing that kind of hope always in schools. And I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, but I walk into a lot of schools. I've done like even some substitute teaching, and it's just like at large, it's just like a lot of, you see old books with like little prairie kids on the cover. You see a lot of worksheets, not a lot of practical stuff. So it's like, I do think that that even contributes to some of the structural violence and the implications of how youth end up doing harm, unfortunately, because we could do better to fill them up.
But I know you said that this film shows the West Side in a way that you've never seen it shown before. Yeah, just give us what does the West Side need? What do you envision for the West Side?
Can we succeed from the nation? That's what we need. That's what we need. Uh, we are very powerful, so if I struggle to say that we need power, but I think y'all understand what I mean when I say that. Um, so we need to be in positions of power to make the decisions about uh, what what investments are happening on the west side, what our curriculum in our schools look like, what our teachers in our schools look like and are equipped with. Um, we what do we need? We need so much. We need so much. We need. Let me shout out um, the John Walt Foundation and their initiative to feed the West Side. So that's a mutual aid initiative that's been going on since 2020 at different parks on the West Side, and it's Black artists, community members who took a very great loss and are still carrying a lot of pain and are using that as fuel for their work to nourish the next generation of young artists growing up on the west side. So 4 days before they lost one of the pillars of their organization and their community, and they had a balloon release at La Folle Park for him after he passed. 4 days before that, they were at that park giving away 500 book bags filled with school supplies, boxes of food. I think they gave away like 300 boxes of food, and I mean like boxes, like you needed to steal one of the shopping carts from Food for Less if you was gonna walk home with your box. You can't just you can't just grab that box and go. So we need more of that. We need more of that. We need um, and this is not just particular to the West Side, but like we need mental health facilities. Um, we need people who care about our mental health, who see us. We need to defund the police. Um, we need recovery, rehabilitation for addiction and um, how we self medicate. Like, there's so much talk about how messed up the war on drugs is, and so little being done to really acknowledge that, or to really put any muscle behind you saying, like, President Biden got in office and talked about the war on drugs was a bad decision, but you've done nothing um, to invest in the lives that were destroyed by that, the communities that were destroyed by that. Um,
I want to, we're running out of time, so I just want to give the audience, oh yeah. I want to give the audience some space to ask a question or two if there's anyone with a burning question. We just have a little bit of time, y'all. Sure.
First of all, thank y'all for being yourselves. I think it's great, to have a platform to be yourself. More than anything else, good, bad, neutral, it don't matter what or how people judge. Just be able to be yourself. I think that's powerful and amazing. The question I have though is this Invest Southwest stuff that's going on in the city of Chicago, where the mayor is saying specifically that she wants to invest on the south side and on the west side, or the administration, whatever the case may be. How do y'all feel about that? Do y'all think it's a good thing? Is it BS? How do you feel about it?
Oh, you got one. Okay.
I got one. I wrote an article for the Tribe. That was an interview with
Oh yeah.
Mayor Lori Lightfoot for her midterm, her 2 years in office. That was a couple months ago in May. We touched a little bit on Invest Southwest. I would really encourage you to read it. It's called Abolitionist's Midterm Conversation with Lori Lightfoot. Oh, okay, okay, great. So you still have that question for me about?
Just yesterday, some more investment is coming. So this thing is sort of accumulating in some sort of way. So that little slight change, that's really what my question is about. Do you think it's, I understand your view. Then sometimes things change if it's a perspective change.
Oh yeah, mine didn't. It
You
didn't.
went then, gotcha.
Do you have something to add, Bianca?
Not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's never gonna be enough.
I would be interested in, she said that it's never going to be enough. I would be interested in looking into that and seeing exactly how much money, because, anytime the mayor is doing something with Invest Southwest, it's like lights, camera, action. Look, I'm bringing, a target to the west side or whatever, and it's going to be 500 jobs. And, it's a press conference all around that. But is it how many ever millions or billions that we given to downtown with the TIF funding? Like, how does it compare to what she's giving to Lincoln Yards and like all this other stuff? I just still feel like it's such a drop in the bucket, and it's like over publicized for PR. So I hope that you know we really getting the investment, and that is something that the community wants, because there's even I don't know that there's enough community outreach where, the city is actually asking residents, like, what do you want to see in your neighborhood,
We
before
asked
it
them
gets there.
specifically to divest from police.
Yeah.
We very specifically asked it.
There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. That's
Hmm.
a fact. And when you talk about the police budget, we're not even, I understand that. So just
Hmm.
that little small piece, I wonder, if I do see the PR behind it and I see exactly what's going on, but is there anything good about it too? You know what I mean? And who's running it, who's managing, the money part of it too. Just want to stay on top of it to see if anybody is really checking for that, to see the result, if any.
The tribe is interested in looking into that and definitely measuring the progress of it, for sure. Any other question? We probably have time for one more. Go ahead.
Hey everybody, my name is Mark. I am a writer and a documenter. And real quick, first of all, I want to say this is one of the best documentaries I've seen pertaining to black women and black women activism. And I love how
Thank you.
well rounded that it was. Like it told the perspective from the academia world and the streets, which is often overlooked and holistically. You know what I'm saying? Like I love the part about the when you had the black souls at the picnic and all that. I
Gang,
feel
gang.
like that was showed black people in the most humanistic forms possible, loving and holding each other and all that, having a good time. But I got a question for Ashley. What was some of the most difficult parts that you had to cut from the documentary that you wanted to
Yeah, we we had to cut a lot out.
Tell them how many hours of footage it is.
It was about 150 hours of footage when it was all said and done, cut into 86 minutes. Yes, yes, and a majority of that was a lot of. So there were, I can't even count how many protests were cut from the film, but I think that was for an intention, like a that was good in the long run. But we actually just talked about the other day. There was a 45-day occupation that Bella and the Let Us Breathe collective across from they occupied the space across from Homan Square, which is a black site, a Chicago police torture site on the west side of Chicago, where Bella's from, and they stayed out there for 45 days and nights and provided mutual aid, education, music, just a gathering space for the community, and really to think about what it would look like if we imagined a world without the police. And so I think I maybe documented 5 or so days of it, but it was one of those things where it was just difficult to be there every single day. I'm sure Bella can testify to that more than I can. And so, that was one of the campaigns of many we weren't able to include. And then I'll also say there was about a 2-week campaign that young black folks had organized to get Anita Alvarez out of office, that I definitely thought was going to be in the film. It was a very grassroots-driven campaign. They would show up at her campaign parties and interrupt them. They would just find out where she was and just be like, "Stop, Anita," just dropping banners. It was really amazing to see how quickly they mobilized. But another one of those things where we didn't want to. I think we had enough footage to support, but we really I think eventually just honed in on these 2 police killings and talked about the people that were tangential to it. And so unfortunately we weren't able to include that whole campaign, but it was like a rapid fire, and it actually worked. So it was really amazing to see how quickly they got the citizens of Chicago to not reinstate Anita Alvarez.
Okay, and we have to get on out of here before they kick us out, but we'll definitely be outside to take more of your questions. So thank you for joining us for this panel and to see Unapologetic, what an activist looks like. It looks like a filmmaker, an educator, a West Sider, a gang member, whoever it is, you can be an organizer and an activist. So thank you.